What's the good word, Josh? Your boy DKB here. So the New York Jets recently released their offseason, or I guess their training camp depth chart. It's nothing official, but I do think it's always worth breaking down and checking out where to kind of have everybody slotted to. I guess by default, right, there is going to be some kind of thought process that's put into this. It's just not going to be as significant as it would be right before we get to week one of the regular season. So let's start with the offensive side. We'll see if there's any surprises here. We have Aaron Rodgers as the starter, Zach Wilson as the primary backup. Tim Boyle is actually the third stringer here, with Chris Streveler being the fourth. I'm not surprised by this at all. Chris Streveler, again, much more of a practice squad player that can be your emergency quarterback. And essentially that's the situation he'll probably thrive in, as opposed to being your, week in, week out starter or even a spot starter. Realistically, he's a guy I'd be comfortable seeing come in and play a half. Tim Boyle, not necessarily super excited about him, but he at least brings in some physical traits and some ability to go out there and stretch the field that you won't see out of a guy like Chris Streveler. But we've seen him go out there, rack up first downs and all that in regards to Chris. So we'll see what happens there. It is interesting to see if they decide to try to keep Chris Streveler on the practice squad, if he's even eligible. I'm not sure about that. But more likely, I'm interested to see if Tim Boyle actually becomes our emergency quarterback, assuming we decide to continue our trend of trying to keep three quarterbacks. So moving into the running back position, Breece Hall as our starter. No surprise there, realistically, even if he doesn't necessarily practice this entire offseason. Our starter, if there's any way that he is healthy and able to go out there and start. Michael Carter is still listed as running back 2. I won't say it's a shocker, but he's kind of earned that right by default. We know Robert Saleh likes to support and back up his guys, especially veteran or program guys, I should say, to kind of separate that distinction. So assuming he's bouncing back and returning to what we've seen in his rookie form, this feels like it's right. Now, it is interesting that Israel Abanikanda is the third string running back right now, ahead of Zonovan Knight, who's the fourth string running back, just because we've seen what Zonovan Knight has been able to go out there and produce. Maybe this is more so utilizing that element of the home run threat that Israel Abanikanda brings. And so as a third string back, maybe he sees, between 3 and 7 snaps in a game, as opposed to maybe 1 to 5 as being the fourth stringer. Those numbers feel like they're a little too close together. Probably like 6 to 12 snaps as opposed to, somewhere between 1 and 7 as the fourth stringer. But no surprises. Again, he's going to bring that home run threat. He's going to bring receiving ability. Not saying Zonovan Knight can't do that, but it's been more pronounced over Israel's career, I guess is the best way to go about putting it. And then you have Zonovan Knight, who safely can be in the mix for the kick punt return battle, assuming we want to try to go ahead and take use of his special teams ability. We don't have a fullback listed on here, which I think is actually interesting, and I don't even remember if we kept Nick Baldwin, so I have to actually check out the roster there. Not sure if Nathaniel Hackett utilizes fullbacks within his offensive scheme, so something to keep in mind there for us. At the wide receiver spots, we have Garrett Wilson, Allen Lazard, and Mecole Hardman Jr. as our starting trio. So Garrett Wilson, obviously the number 1. Allen Lazard has been essentially placed in as the number 2 wide receiver for now. So not sure if that's speaking more so to the fact that, he's younger than Corey Davis, and the physical profile and ability is essentially the same. And so, hopefully you're, assuming you can tap into that Aaron Rodgers connection there. And he already knows the offense, so there's not going to be as much of an adjustment with him coming in right away. Mecole Hardman, starting slot wide receiver, is going to be my assumption here. I would say that is a bit of a surprise, especially over a guy like Randall Cobb, who's been able to do it at a high level over the course of his career, or even having a guy like Corey Davis there, who we've seen be able to play not only boundary but in the slot So I don't know. We'll see if that gets mixed up. But for the second stringers, Corey Davis, Randall Cobb, Denzel Mims, actually, which I feel like should be a shocker, but not as much when you consider the third stringers is Deontay Spencer, Irvin Charles, Malik Taylor, and then we have the UDFAs, Jason Brownlee and Xavier Gibson as the fourth string. Now, Denzel Mims, he's on a thin, he's on thin ice, right? Again, mentioned this before. Green Bean has suggested there's rumors out there the coaching staff is not high on Denzel Mims. Not a shocker considering we know that he struggles to adjust to playbooks, but this is somewhat of a friendlier offense in terms of simplifying things and, it not being as chaotic. And we've heard this from the players' mouths themselves already. I don't think there's any other shockers. I mean, Garrett Allen, Miko, Corey, Randall, that's obviously going to be your top five right there. If we decide to carry six, Denzel Mims just kind of by default, I guess, has the inside starting job. But I did hear that Irvin Charles is high on the list. And then you think about a guy like Jason Brownlee, who's offering some of the same physical profile, just not as strong of athletic traits that he's going to bring to the position. But honestly, we could probably chop that 6 wide receiver spot as well, depending on how we choose to fill out other areas of the roster. Tight end, Tyler CJ first and second, Jeremy Ruckert is third, with Zach Kuntz as fourth. No shock here. This is pretty much the way I expected things to play out unless somebody's absolutely been blowing people away. Zach Kuntz is a guy that I would assume is going to make the 53 as of right now, but we'll actually cover some more stuff with this roster actually Monday on the Jets Flight Squad, so stay tuned. That'll be fun. So no surprise in the tight end room whatsoever. Okay, I did see it. Missed it. We have our fullback here, Nick Bawden. They probably should place this closer to the running back. That's a little odd to me. But no surprises there, Nick Bawden. We'll see if we choose to try to bring in competition there. But kind of feels like his job, I guess, to essentially lose. And from what I know, Robert Saleh and them have kind of liked what he's been able to do so far. So safe for him. At the starting offensive line spots, Dwayne Brown at left tackle. So this is interesting. I also believe I've seen in numerous reports that they've been working out Mekhi Becton on the right side already. So we'll see how that pans out. We tried to have an open competition before. Robert Saleh kind of killed that between Dwayne Brown and Mekhi Becton. So we'll see if this ends up being another one of those true competitions, or if this ends up kind of just being one of those situations where, as Robert mentioned, he truly wants to just get his top five out there on the field. So interesting, considering Mekhi Becton's on a contract year now, and Dwayne Brown will be here most likely after next year. Laken Tomlinson at left guard, Connor McGovern starting, and Elijah Vera Tucker starting at right guard. So outside of the Dwayne Brown-Mekhi swap, I guess you could say, no real shocker there. Second unit, we have Eric Smith at left tackle, Wes Schweitzer at left guard, Joe Tippmann backing up Connor McGovern, Tristan Colon at right guard, Billy Turner backing up Mekhi Becton at right tackle. Again, not any surprises, although I will say I feel like Max Mitchell should be slotted in potentially ahead of Billy Turner, or at least ahead of Eric Smith, considering how he performed last year. So I would be curious to know if there's any concerns about the blood clot issues going on still, or if this is just he needs to kind of work his way back up the roster. Again, unofficial, so this could be a whole lot of nothing. Maybe they want to get some looks at some other guys a little bit more over the course of camp to see if they have any hidden gems. But something worth noting that maybe Max Mitchell is on the outside looking in here. Greg Sinnat, as mentioned, Max Mitchell as the third string tackles, Chris Glazer, Brett Lang as the third string guards, and then we have Carter Warren, the fourth string tackle, recent fourth round draft pick that we picked up out of Pitt. So the rookie and Max Mitchell seems like they're going to have to earn every ounce of being able to come out there and make the 53-man roster as of right now. Carter Warren, I'm not surprised either. Maybe they're playing it precautionary with him potentially still trying to rehab his injury. So we'll see. Excuse me. we'll see what ultimately ends up happening with that. But ultimately, center is kind of a 1A, 1B type situation. That's going to be a true competition. I think whoever loses, not whoever loses, actually. If Joe Tippmann doesn't win the starting job, I think they just keep him as the primary backup center. If McGovern happens to lose, I think that's a different argument where you say they utilize him in a guard capacity and maybe he's the main backup to Laken Tomlinson. But moving into defense, so our starting defensive line, we have JFM on the left, Quentin Jefferson at one defensive tackle spot, Quentin Williams at the other, and Carl Lawson as your starting unit there. Really not any surprises. Again, I would strongly push to see JFM on the inside here, and then you rotate him out to the edge. But it is what it is. We've seen them effectively be able to utilize their defensive line players last year, so I'm not going to argue over the alignments. Second string, Jermaine Johnson, Solomon Thomas, Al Woods, Will McDonald the fourth. So edge prospects, Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, Solomon Thomas, Al Woods. On the inside, curious that they don't have Bryce Huff potentially ahead of a guy like Will McDonald, who is going to be in the same situation. Potentially a strong pass rushing, rotational, situational player, but he's going to be pretty ineffective against the run, especially early on, being lighter, unless he surprises us. Bryce Huff is in that same situation, but he's proven to go out there and effectively dominate those situations. So, again, maybe an early look for the rookie, but find it interesting that he's Bryce Huff is so far back. Maybe potential trade situations on the horizon there. Third stringer, Bryce Huff is mentioned on the edge. Michael Clemens out on the edge. Marquise Spencer, Tanzel Smart on the inside. Tanzel Smart is a guy that I think could potentially try to push to make a defensive tackle rotation. Again, I think he was a tough cut last year. He's made a lot of noise in the preseason, so it's not like there's anything he's done to not necessarily earn the job. But considering Solomon Thomas got a little bit of a pay raise, and then, of course, we brought in a guy like Al Woods late in Quentin Jefferson, it's looking like another uphill battle for him. So, I don't know. I'm not even sure if we have practice squad eligibility for him anymore if he doesn't make this particular roster. And then Isaiah Mack, I know, was a late waiver wire pickup towards the end of last year, or I think very, very early in the offseason for us. So not really expecting much with him, and it makes sense that he's at the fourth string spot. But Bradley Anai is also in the fourth string unit for the edge rusher position. That is a little bit of a shocker. Same thing. I think he could be bumped up over a guy like Marquise Spencer, considering how strongly he performed last season as well. So we'll have to see how a couple of those different situations work themselves out. But I know Bradley is also dealing with an injury and is on injured reserve, as you can see noted there as well. So I know we haven't got any information on what that was. So we'll find out. But linebacker unit, Jamian Sherwood as a starter on the weak side, CJ Mosley at middle linebacker, Quincy Williams at strong side. Really, I shouldn't be surprised. I think, if anything, Chaz Surratt might have been a guy that I thought could have been in one of the starting units. But again, we brought him on late. The staff really likes Jamian Sherwood. Me and Tigo actually had a little bit of a talk about seeing CJ Mosley potentially take over a weak or strong side linebacker role and kind of utilize to the best of his ability what he still can do at an elite level without having to worry about going sideline to sideline as much. Zaire Barnes, the rookie, at second string. Chaz Surratt at middle linebacker. Hamza Nasruddin is backing up Quincy Williams at strong side. Really not a lot of shock here. Malik Hall, Clyden Sherrillis, the UDFAs at third string. I believe we probably only end up carrying 5 guys here, so Hamza Nasruddin is still the guy I'm looking at as the odd man out in this particular situation. And then we get to the cornerbacks. Sauce Gardner, DJ are going to be our starters. They don't necessarily put a nickel or a slot cornerback here, but we know Michael Carter II is going to fill that role. Brandon Echols is going to be on suspension for the first game, but he will be backing up DJ Reed. Strong rookie season. Didn't really get a whole lot out of him last year. I think 8 tackles. I think he played like 13 games. Bryce Hall is the third stringer, so he is still kind of on the outs after originally being our number one cornerback. And a lot of the feedback being that we know he doesn't make a lot of plays on the ball in terms of being able to force the turnover. But hopefully he can bounce back, maybe overtake Brandon Echols once again. I know a lot of people were questioning if he can make the move to safety. So maybe that's something that the coaching staff considers trying out this offseason. And then we have Justin Hardy, Jarek Bernard, Converse, and Jimmy Moreland as the rest of our third and fourth stringers. So no surprises whatsoever. The cornerback room was going to be the hardest position to crack in terms of there being any surprises. So that plays out pretty much as expected there. Although I do still find it interesting Justin Hardy's as high as he is. You would think he would automatically be the last cornerback at his position, considering he doesn't play any snaps whatsoever, with the exception of the 1 or 2 times they subbed him in. I think the first year that we picked him up. So outside of that, safeties to kick things off and finish up here. Chuck Clark is the starting strong safety with Jordan Whitehead playing the free safety role here. Now, it's not what I kind of figured was going to happen. I thought that Jordan Whitehead and Chuck Clark, obviously both more of a strong safety than free safety, would be slotted in as the first and second stringer. But it does kind of make sense. Chuck Clark is arguably the better strong safety at this point in time. Not saying Jordan Whitehead can't beat him out or be better, especially moving into his second year and with the talent that we've surrounded him with. But it does kind of make sense to maximize your 2 best safeties overall, which means Tony Adams gets pushed to the second string. He could still win the competition and things could fall into place the way I expect, though. So if he does, that'll be a huge boost to Tony Adams. It would be a bit of a concern for Jordan Whitehead, although we should all have the understanding he'll be playing out of position. He's just doesn't really have the instincts to play the deep side of the field. So we'll see. Maybe it's an early experiment that'll end pretty quick. Ashton Davis backing up with Tony Adams. Ashton Davis has strong safety. Will Parks has strong safety, trading a third at free safety. Interesting, especially considering he's also another strong safety. So I would assume that they will flip spots, and trading would eventually overtake Will Parks, and then Marquise Waters is the 4th stringer there. And then on special teams, we really have no surprises. So interesting. Again, it's very unofficial there. I'm sure there's not a ton of thought and input that the Jets poured into, bringing out this depth chart. But the early look at it, some of the early thoughts and things are pretty interesting here. So let me know what you think about what the New York Jets are rolling out at this point in time, and I'll catch you guys again. Peace.